Chapter 68. God's Order. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 5 to 12. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on the woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. If a bird's nest chance to be before thee in the way in any tree or on the ground, whether they be young ones or eggs, and the dam sitting upon the young or upon the eggs, thou shalt not take the dam with the young. But thou shalt in any ways let the dam go and take the young to thee, that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest prolong thy days. When thou buildest a new house, then thou shalt make a battlement for thy roof, that thou bring not blood upon thine house, if any man fall from thence. Thou shalt not sow thy vineyard with diverse seeds, lest the fruit of thy seed which thou hast sown, and the fruit of thy vineyard be defiled. Thou shalt not plough with an ox and an ass together. Thou shalt not wear a garment of divers sorts, as of woolen and linen together. Thou shalt make thee fringes upon the four quarters of thy vesture, wherewith thou coverest thyself. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 5 to 12. There are 7 laws in these 8 verses, and there is an inner unity to them. The first law, in verse 5, prohibits cross-dressing at the very least, and this is declared as abomination unto the Lord. Where the word abomination is used, we know that we are on serious grounds. This law can mean A. That transvestite dressing is barred, whatever the reason for it. B. That some pagan cults celebrating chaos required cross-dressing and perverse sexual acts as a part of worship, and God's people are not to imitate them in any way. C. And that not only cross-dressing but also engaging in work that properly belongs to the other sex is forbidden. It was long ago seen as barring combatant war roles to women. D. The law of verse 5 means all these things and more. God has created us male and female, and we must honour the God-ordained distinction. This was an anti-Canaanite law, among other things, because Canaanite practice was hostile to the distinctive places of men and women. This view marked Rome in its degeneracy, and more than one emperor tried to obliterate the sexual distinction in his own life. Ritual emasculation was one way among many of denying the clear-cut sexual distinctiveness of male and female. The expression in verse 5, that which pertaineth, or anything that pertains to a man or a woman, means clothing, weapons, utensils, and tools. Then and now transvestism is associated with homosexuality, and it has always had anti-biblical religious connotations. Verses 1 to 4 set forth the God-declared fact of property as his ordination. Now, in verse 5, we see that our sexuality is a property that we must not attempt to divest ourselves of, for to do so is an abomination in God's sight. It is filthy behaviour. The second law, verses 6 and 7, concerns birds. In antiquity, and in many areas to this day, birds have been an important part of life. For 2 decades after World War II, in some parts of Western Europe, even sparrows were routinely trapped for food by the poor, according to one American soldier's wife. We have here a law governing such hunting, and any use of birds. The assumption of the law is that these are clean birds. The destruction of the species is in effect forbidden. The mother bird must be allowed to live, to conserve the species. There is a promise for obedience to this law, that thou mayest prolong thy days. Verse 7. This is, of course, the same promise attached to the fifth commandment. Honour thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. We honour God, the creator of all life, when we honour the immediate sources of life. This is a God-required duty. Parents who make it difficult for their children to honour them thus bear an especial guilt, as do children who will not honour their parents. In Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 19 and 20, fruit trees are protected from wartime destruction. Here, mother birds are protected. A curious fact is that these laws and others like them are used to give Deuteronomy a date almost 1,000 years after Moses by modernist critics. Their reasoning is that these laws are, like these scholars, quote, enlightened, end quote, ones, and therefore they had to come after mankind had grown out of some of its superstitions. Some have seen this law as protective of fertility. However, the fertility protected is that of clean birds. The third law, verse 8, refers to the flat-roofed houses of the time. In warm weather, a great deal of evening activity, dining, entertaining, and even sleeping took place on the rooftop. The law requires a railing around the roof to prevent anyone from falling off and injuring themselves or being killed. There is a similar law in Exodus chapter 21, verses 33 and 34. If a man made an excavation in the process of some kind of a construction, and the excavation was where a neighbour's livestock could fall in, he was liable for damages. The excavation had to be covered or fenced in. This law is still widely used, especially in urban construction of large commercial buildings. Failure to build a balustrade left one open to blood guiltiness in case of an accident. In our times, we have substituted a variety of codes and regulations for this law, and building restrictions and licenses. God's law eliminates all this because it makes clear the serious liabilities for failures to comply. At least a manslaughter, if not a murder charge, depending on the circumstances, was incentive enough for sound building practices. God's law does not create a bureaucracy. It establishes a liability which gives men the incentive to comply. The fourth law forbids sowing one's vineyard with diverse seeds. Such mixed sowing will defile the field. This can occur, A, by bringing together plants that will crossbreed to the detriment of both. Gardeners learn in time to keep certain plants apart, and B, certain fruit trees and vines find their strength sapped by certain kinds of plantings. The temptation to do this comes when an orchard or vineyard is newly planted. This means there will be no harvest for a few years. In order to have some income from the farm, the owner may plant in between the rows certain vegetable crops. Some of these can and do harm or devitalize the vines or trees. The first law bans cross-dressing. This law bans cross-planting, as it were. Both require us to see the integrity of God's creating purpose. Their relationship is obvious. The laws concerning birds and battlements or balustrades protect life. We must recognize the integrity of God's creation. These are thus not merely miscellaneous laws, but related ones. The fifth and sixth laws again stress the integrity and separateness of God's creative designs. The fifth law, verse 10, forbids ploughing with an ox and ass together. There are differences of strength and kind between these two. Moreover, the ox is a clean animal, and the donkey is not. There is an obvious injustice to both animals in trying to work them together. Verses 9 to 11 give us 3 laws against unjust or unnatural combinations. The world is not what we want it to be, but what God ordained concerning it. We must work under God, not against Him. The unequal strength of the ox and the donkey means that the combination of the two is harmful to both and therefore to the owner. It is an amazing fact that to this day Palestinians insist on yoking an ox and a donkey together, despite centuries of experience that it is unwise to do so. The 6th law prohibits wearing garments of contrary materials, such as wool and linen together. Verse 11. Most of our modern synthetic cloth violates this law, although some scientists have seen the combinations as bad for one's health. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 19 forbids cross-breeding, as a horse with a donkey, sowing a field with mingled seed, and using garments of mixed wool and linen. Hosea chapter 2, verses 5 and 9 associates such mixed yarns with Baal worship. It was a rebellion against God's order. In each of the laws of verses 5 to 11, this is the case. Which order shall prevail? God's or man's? The 7th law, verse 12, requires the fringes on the garments, a practice common among Orthodox Jews. As H. Wheeler Robinson, by no means anything but a modernist, observed early in the 20th century, these are memorial tassels. According to Numbers chapter 15, verses 37 to 41, these were a reminder to keep God's law. Very early, the cross became the Christian reminder, and the cross appeared in or over the church, in one's home, or on one's clothing. We live in a physical world, and physical signs to remind us of who God is and what we are surely needed. Symbols of faith are thus important. Our current war against Christianity is making the use of symbols difficult or impossible. To wear a cross in public is to invite hostility. Sadly, even some Protestants, Zwinglian in their views, are averse to crosses in or over a church. The ringing of church bells is banned in many places. The relationship between property and person was known to Marxist interrogators in prisons. At times, to break a man of all resistance, he would be stripped of all clothing and questioned in a cold room. The interrogator would be warmly dressed, drinking coffee and smoking. While the naked prisoner shivered, his resistance to tyranny lowered by the indignity to his person.